Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And I'll start with some announcements. One is, if you missed the research boot camp last Saturday, we recorded it, and we can send you the slides and the recording if you'd like to listen to it and go through the slides on your own at home. Just send me an email if you're interested in that. The second thing, keep those career inquiries coming. If you're in the healthcare field and you really are tired of this nonsense, you don't want to be part of it, Pam Popper at msn.com. I'll send you some information. Happy to talk to you and give you some guidelines about what I know about this business and where I think the opportunities are. Make Americans Free Again. We had some exciting news last week. I'm wearing my Make Americans Free Again garb. You can order at makeamericansfreeagain.com. You can also donate there if you would like to support what we're doing. We always appreciate that. And remember, I do a teleconference every Thursday at noon to teach you how to organize in your area. I mean, we really need all hands on deck to deal with this mess that we're in, right? So sign up for one of those conference calls. And then classes coming up. Food allergies is tonight. And again, if you missed the class, but you want to take it, we always record these things and we videotape them afterwards and all that sort of thing. HIV/AIDS is coming up. Let's see, Letting Go of the Past starts at the beginning of March. This is Kylia's new program, our tremendous therapist. It is just what it sounds like, letting go of the past. And boy, do we have a lot of that to do during these troubled times, right? And so anyway, I'll tell you more as the week goes on, but those are just a few of the things that are coming up that are really interesting. And communication and problem solving also, which is part of, you can't be a healthy person when you're stressed out and living in conflict all the time. So we have a boot camp coming up for that too. If you'd like to know everything that's going on, you can go to our website at WellnessForumHealth.com. I posted an amazing Forbidden video, and you should take a look at it there. And I put out the Forbidden newsletter. You can get all that, Pam Popper at msn.com. All right, so today what I want to talk about is experts say SARS-CoV-2 isn't going away. And so I think it's reasonable to ask after about a year of all of this, how is it going to end? And my answer is not anytime soon, and it depends which part of it you're talking about. I don't think that the government is going to stop doing what they're doing anytime soon. I think it's lawsuits that are going to deal with that. And there's all kinds of other problems we're going to have to solve. Hungry people, businesses closed, kids who are psychologically damaged. I know what I'm going to be doing for the last third of my life, right? But what about the virus itself? So I looked into what experts are saying. Great article online that I took some of this from. But I'll just tell you what they think about this, all right? And I think it's always good to look at what traditional experts have to say. And they say some surprising things that you often don't hear other places. So Kate Baker is an infectious disease researcher at the University of Liverpool in the UK. And she says, quote, "I don't think anyone who's reasonably well informed about infectious diseases and how they move in populations thinks we're going to eradicate COVID-19. The chances of this disease going away are very small. I think we're going to end up tolerating a certain level of disease." And so let's put that in perspective, because some of you might think, oh my gosh, if it's not going away, we're going to live like this forever. Well, that's what lawsuits are for. But what she's basically saying is contrary to the party line of the government, which is we're going to be some moment of defeat where we extinguish the virus. And it's almost like they think caped, supermen are going to come in here and purge COVID-19 from the planet, and then we'll never have it again. But it's not what is going to happen. And part of it is, if you study a little bit about viruses, you're going to find out that they don't behave that way. And this one isn't going to behave that way either. What will most likely happen is COVID-19 is going to become endemic. And that's what Baker says. Humans are going to share the earth with SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, like we share the planet with a whole lot of other viruses that circulate around, like seasonal flu and common colds and that sort of thing. I mean, it might interest you to know that part of your genome is viral. In other words, that's how long humans have been living with viruses on the planet, a real, real long time. So if you haven't heard the term endemic before, it's used by epidemiologists to describe a scenario in which a disease spreads at a relatively slow and stable level, kind of like the common cold. I mean, we don't have hysteria when people get a cold, do we? The only way that you could eradicate COVID-19 would be through a sustained global vaccination program, says Graham Medley, an infectious disease modeler at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. He's also an advisor to the UK government. This was done with smallpox in the 1970s, but one of the reasons was they were able to develop what's called a sterilizing immunity type vaccine. So they stopped people from getting the disease and spreading it, which is not the case with the COVID-19 vaccines. They basically said that it does not stop you from getting COVID-19. It just means that your case might not be so severe, and it doesn't stop you from spreading COVID-19, which is why you have to keep wearing masks and you have to keep social distancing, right? Jenny Levine, a biologist at Emory University in Atlanta, says she's betting against the ability to develop a COVID-19 vaccine that is sterilizing immunity because, quote, not anything against the vaccines, but it doesn't seem like that's how our immunity to coronaviruses typically works. In other words, even if there was a COVID-19 vaccine that introduced sterilizing immunity and enough people could be persuaded to actually get that vaccine, you still don't end up with guaranteed eradication. It would take years, it would be hugely expensive, and you would have to periodically give booster shots, and you'd have to take into consideration the fact that the virus is going to mutate, because that's what viruses do. I actually put out a video about that some time ago. She said, Medley says, we'd have to keep vaccinating if it existed any place else in the world. Eradication requires large global coordination, which is just not there at the moment, and we don't have the political, social, and economic structure to distribute it equally around the world. Thus, he says, COVID-19 is just going to become endemic. We're going to live with it. So what happens, what's the phenomenon that causes us to be able to live with something like this? Well, the susceptible hosts number of susceptible hosts drops over time. So each infected individual passes the disease on to fewer and fewer, because there's so many people who already have had it. And then what happens is people die, usually the vulnerable older people die, the others develop immunity. And as we've seen, the death rate's low in the younger population. In fact, in Ohio, if you look at our dashboard for the 0 to 39 age group, it's 0%. It only goes up to 1% when you get to people 40 and over. And it really isn't until you get to the elderly, particularly those in care homes who have comorbidities, that you really see a high death rate. In fact, the average age of death in the state of Ohio is 80. And since you've got 0% at that lower end, it really means that much older people who with comorbidities are dying. So Levine published a modeling study concerning COVID in which she predicted that the threat from COVID would be about the same as the common cold. It's published in Science. She reported that catching SARS-CoV-2 virus once or twice in childhood would prevent people from getting serious disease later in life, which makes the decision to close the schools or demand mask wearing and social distancing for grade school kids just brilliant. In other words, if kids getting SARS-CoV-2 is what could protect people over time and make this just like the common cold, preventing children from getting SARS-CoV-2 is a fabulous idea, right? Well, the government's just been full of fabulous ideas during the last year. Key to this prediction, according to Levine, is that COVID-19 continues to trigger mild or no symptoms in children where they're exposed to the virus for the first time. Such childhood exposure can then be tolerated by society because it grants lasting immune protection, topped up by regular re-exposure to the circulating virus. So the world has probably been here before, she says. The 4 coronaviruses identified as responsible for common colds have thought to have been far more dangerous when they first emerged as human diseases. Some of these we think were the basis for what people at the time called flu epidemics or pandemics, said an immunologist at Lisbon University in Portugal. And so another example, studies show that so-called Russian flu that killed 1 million people in 1890 might have been caused by the human coronavirus OC43, and now it's endemic. In other words, what's really going on here when you start getting rid of the hysteria and you talk to some people who really understand viruses and vaccinations and immunity and herd immunity and have studied the history of viruses and viral infections and that sort of thing, is you find out the real story of COVID-19 is something we're really familiar with. We've seen this before for 100 years. It's actually not novel. Real experts knew what to do. We just didn't ask them and instead let charlatans and criminals call the shots, and thus we find ourselves in this very ridiculous position we're in. So when's it going to be over? It's going to be over when the courts end it to a certain extent. It's going to be over when people are just sick and tired of this. And it's going to be over when people who are sensible have a bigger voice in the discussion. And that's starting to happen, which is a good thing. All right, as usual, thank you for watching this. Pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy learning about the other side of this entire issue. And I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.